Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I'm Mona Duncan, and I'm here with my co-host, Jan Moray, and we have a few people that are joining us to listen in on our conversing. And Jan picked our topic for today, and she is asked the question, is coercion ever a justifiable response? So, Jan, what are you wondering about? I see a lot of yeah buts in the description of it. So
right. And
thoughts?
this is a question that came up in one of our earlier Greet the Weeks a few weeks ago, and it was requested that we bring up this topic of coercion. So I've been thinking about it, and there's some other things that have gone on in my life that have brought it to life about this whole coercion thing. But Mona, I'm going to start like the way you start, with a definition. So let me pull up my definition here of coercion according to Webster. It says, number one, to compel to an act or choice. Number two, to achieve by force. Number three, to restrain or dominate by force. None of that sounds very choice theory-like to me. Anytime you're talking about persuading people and threatening them, and just doesn't sound right. But we have laws, we have things that that say whether we can do something or not do something, and some people believe very strongly in them. So even though they're not law enforcement, they feel like it's their duty to tell you and to try to make you do something or not do something. And so, the one thing that keeps coming back to my mind is, well, I guess a lot of it depends on the relationship that you have with the person you're trying to coerce. If relationship is important to you, then maybe you'll think twice about making them do something or trying to persuade them to do something. Whereas if you're not so concerned about the relationship, you really, doesn't matter so much to you. But then also running through my head was dealing with people with dementia or Alzheimer's, where they can no longer tell you what, whether they will cooperate or not, or cooperate just so you see them, but be resentful and do other things. Whereas somebody with memory issues, they're just going to tell you right then that they're not happy with what you're trying to make you do. And it gives you I found watching people with memory issues, you really get a good view of what people are thinking when you're trying to make them do something, because they lash out, they fight back, they're agitated. So if you think about the effect that you have on a person by trying to make them do something, it's not very positive. And if that you value that relationship, maybe you would approach it in a different way. So that's kind of, I know it's a lot of stuff to think about, but that's just kind of the way I started putting my thoughts together on this whole coercion question.
Well, just from what you've said, I've made three little notes here that talking about, laws, and there are laws, and the thing of it is those laws were enacted by we the people. Mm-hmm. The thing of it is that all too often we the people are not all engaged in making the laws. And some may be more against the law, but they didn't vote and participate and learn about it. And so, by default, it went into being law.
Right.
Of course, I keep going back to Aristotle again and again and again, and how he influenced probably everybody in the world through one means or another. And it was always the fact of being integritous, being who you are, getting to know who you are. And that as long as we can treat the other person with integrity, it's not to agree with, it's not to disagree with, it's just to treat them with integrity. And then about the dementia, or whether it's just someone that's just so angry that the blood is not getting all the way to the head to really think. I say personally, you cannot reason with an unreasonable person.
Exactly. You can't. You
Whether
can't.
that is through age, whether that is through anger, whether that is through anything. So just drop it.
Yeah.
And I know many times in just dropping it, it seems like, well, you know, I know not too long ago, someone made a comment and I thanked them for it because, you know, I thank you for that comment. And I just sensed so much passion there that I wasn't going to touch it. I was just going to, you know, live in integrity and go on. But whenever we are agitated, we become unreasonable. And it's not to say that that person is always unreasonable. You know, sometimes whenever they've a little bit more, they can. So anyway, just to quit trying to reason with, then that makes us unreasonable. Trying to reason with someone that for whatever reason is being unreasonable.
Yeah.
It's just
well, it's interesting, the whole trying to reason with somebody, because you have your idea of what reason is, and they have a very different idea of what it is. And, you know, trying to persuade them and even insult them, sometimes it goes into calling them names and things, to try to get them to change their mind so that they know what you're saying is right and they'll agree with you. It just doesn't happen that way. In fact, the more you push somebody and the more you try to reason with them, the more set in their ways they get, because they've already made their mind up that you're not acting in their best interest. And so no matter what you say from then on, is going to help the situation. So, but I'm thinking, with the law too, you do always have a choice of whether to follow it or not. And we talk about running, the red light. It says that we're supposed to stop, but the red light's not making us stop. We're choosing to stop, but we could go through it like everybody. I'm sure everybody has gone through a red light at some time in their life. They chose to do that. And so then I started also thinking about these laws and people trying to make you do things. I think a lot of the medical profession and doctors, for example, they have, they want all your numbers to be just right, and if your numbers aren't just right, they want you to take medication for it. And I was very fortunate to have a doctor who allowed me not to go on medication because I just didn't want to. And I knew all the risks, and that was a great relationship for me because she would listen to me and we could talk about it. So yes, I understand what you're telling me, but I've done my own reading, I've done my own research, and I understand the risks, and I just don't think, because of other things going on in my life, that the risk is bad enough for me to take the medication, because there are risks in taking the medication as well. And so we were able to discuss it, and so I felt good with her because we could talk about it. And then she moved somewhere else, so I had to find a new doctor, and this new doctor, oh my God, she was by the book and by the numbers, and she wouldn't listen to anything. It had to be this way. And I just felt very, very put off by that and never went back to her. And so you go back to this whole coercion thing. I mean, you may think that, because I know that she felt very much in her mind that I was going to die. I was going to have a stroke because I wasn't taking the medication that she wanted me to take. And I was doing all this really unhealthy and unsafe practice. And it's like, I understand the risks. I understand what's going on. If you will at least talk to me in a civil voice instead of acting like I know everything and I don't care what you say. And so that goes back to the whole relationship thing. if that relationship is important, you can let people know that you truly believe that they should be doing something. I'm the expert, I'm the doctor, I think you ought to be doing this, but allow them the freedom as to whether they choose to do that or don't. And if they decide not to, it's making sure that they understand all the risks and have that discussion.
And the bottom line is everything has a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And consequences, even if they are well researched and well thought out, and looking at because everything has a trade-off, and looking at the positives and the negatives of it, there's a consequence, and it's being human enough, integritous enough to take that consequence. If that's the way you choose to go, and then don't complain about it and don't gripe about it and don't have all those things there. And maybe that even would include a part of, getting in touch with your real integrity to move on to maybe another source of information and not holding that one in disregard.
Right. Good. Exactly. Yeah. Because that's a lot of times we start on the one path where we're finding everything that supports what we want, and we don't want to read about or listen to the other side of the story that doesn't support.
And then too, we got to continually monitor ourselves. Am I really listening to what they're saying to me, or am I just automatically discounting it because I don't want to hear it, because I have my point of view that is much brighter than their point of view that they're saying?
Yeah.
It's whether we've really listened or not before we automatically discount.
Right, which is the the reason why there should be a discussion, where there is time for people to get together, instead of just somebody saying, no, this is the way it's supposed to be, you're supposed to do this, but I want to entertain. And I get it. I mean, I can be very stubborn, and I get it. When I have something in my mind, I want it to be true and I want it to be right, and I'm going to keep pushing and pushing. But there have been times that I finally get to the point and I said, I guess I'm going to have to give up on that idea. And I'm going to go ahead and go with what my doctor's telling me, or what I need to be doing here.
So had you come to any conclusion? Did you follow, or are you rebelling?
Well, it's gone both ways. It's gone both ways. And it's because I'm trying to collect as much information as I can. I'm trying to do what I can. But after a while of trying this and trying that and trying this, and nothing seems to be working, it's like, okay, maybe I need to just stop and go back and follow and do what they want me to do.
So you asked the question, is there anything wrong with allowing natural consequences to occur?
Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you find that with your family members, when you're fighting, arguing with them, trying to get them to do something, and it's not right, but they've got their mindset on doing that. And so
in allowing those natural consequences to occur, can you still maintain relationship with that one that's
sure you can. Sure you can. I mean, it's going to be a little difficult. You might want to avoid that topic for a while until it's not so fresh, but definitely you can keep that relationship going. And but I think allowing natural consequences can be a huge teacher for us. Good lessons learned by just letting things happen. Sometimes the lesson we learn is not one we really wanted to learn, but nonetheless, that's what happened.
So you made the comment in the very beginning about it may not be the choice theory way, but so what is the choice theory way?
Well, the choice theory way, we look at relationships first, because those relationships are so important to us. And, we want to do everything we can. And it goes back to the question, is what I'm going to say or do so important that I'm willing to risk the the strength of the relationship for it. And so and usually when you're coercing somebody to do something, you are risking the strength of the relationship as a result of that. I mean, especially if because by the time you get to coercion, you've already, in my mind, you've already made the suggestion that they do something, that they change something. And so when you're getting to the point when you're trying to force them to do something, is my forcing this person to do this thing, is that worth losing this relationship or damaging it?
And so that's an individual thing that the person has to come up with on their own.
Right.
And so maybe as you decide within yourself, I'm talking you personally, but you, whoever the you is, myself as a you, once the individual decides personally that it's just not worth demanding that they see it from my point of view, then turn that subject off in a way that is not going to put a wall between you and that person.
Right. And really listen to their objections. Because a lot of times people put up objections because they're not feeling heard. And so if because they think that you're bringing this thing up, you want them to do something because you don't understand. You don't understand what's going on inside of them. So it's like, okay, so tell me about it. Explain to me what you're looking. What is your goal? What do you want? And that's the way to approach the subject. So a lot of times you really do have the same goal, but you just have different ideas of how you get there. And doesn't mean that one way is right and the other is wrong. They're just different.
Right. It's back to my personal philosophy that we're more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
And that many times we are trying for the same outcome. It's just one is in reason and we see the other one as being as not so reasonable.
Right. It's not what I would choose.
Right.
Yeah.
So then when you make the decision, is the decision made and it's never to be thought about again, or what?
Not necessarily. In fact, probably you come back to it over and over again, especially if you agree to disagree, and they're going to be doing what they were doing that you didn't want them to do, and it's probably still going to irritate you if they're doing what they're doing, and you probably have to do a lot of self-talk to say, hey, we agreed that this was going to happen, and it's hard when something a negative consequence results from that to not say I told you so, and it's difficult. I mean, but you can come to some kind of a mutual agreement at some point down the road. Maybe now is not the time you can't do it right now, but after you've had a chance to think about it and experience a few more things, maybe things will change later on.
Okay, so let's go back to your illustration you were using about the doctor.
Okay.
One doctor was real amenable to your case.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, you were on the same track as far as thinking of healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And now the new doctor is not on the same
Correct.
path that you are in taking care of your health. So are you still with that doctor?
Oh, no.
No, okay. But
No.
in the process, did you listen to his or her objections to what you are doing or were doing?
Oh, yeah. I understood very well what she was.
And now that you are pursuing, another way,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with a doctor or not, now that you're pursuing another way, do you ever hearken back and think of some of the things that doctor said and see some more validity to it than you did at the moment?
Well, that doctor I only saw one time.
Oh, okay.
So we really didn't discuss anything. She was concerned about numbers.
Okay.
Okay. and didn't know anything about me, didn't know anything about my lifestyle, didn't know anything else about what was going on with me. All it was, she could not get past the numbers. And that's why I decided not to go back. I said, okay, there's a lot of other doctors.
You felt coerced.
Yeah, right. Right, you know, and that I mean, I know some people, I don't like anybody telling me what to do anything, you know, and I grew up in a very strict household, and that was something that I just didn't like it growing up, and I have fought it all my life. Anytime somebody says you have to, I'm like, well, make me, and, or I'm not going to. I'm an intelligent person. I'm going to figure it out on my own. I'm going to research it, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to make my own decision. I'll be more than happy to discuss it with you, and let's talk it through. Like this doctor I have now, we're not 100% agreeing, but at least she's willing to talk it through with me, and to suggest some other things to do, and you know, so it's a more collaborative relationship.
Okay, so that you do have a care physician that's helping you make decisions.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not just out there on your own completely.
Not completely.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Sure, Jerry.
You mentioned the phrase, "I told you so," a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
And I presume that's after something you recommended and they didn't do it and something bad happened. And you might want to say, "I told you so." And I guess choice theory says you're not supposed to say, "I told you so." But how would you deal with it? What other words would you use in that situation instead of "I told you so"? How would you approach it? How do you come back to an issue?
I don't think there's any reason to say "I told you so."
Oh yeah,
they're going through some kind of negative consequence. So instead of bringing up the issue that "I told you that would happen," it's like just provide support with the person going through the negative consequence. So, you know, I think in any kind of important relationship, whether they do what you want them to do or not, when they're in trouble, you're there to help them. You're there to support them through it. It doesn't matter that they did something you didn't want them to do.
Yes.
So you're not, because they already know. They already know that they did something that you were not happy with. So go ahead, Mona.
And even if they do, and even they say, well, you're thinking that, you know, I just didn't listen to you, you know, just kind of deflect it. I mean, listen to it and hear it. And, you know, I saw things differently, but this is another day and another time. And you're just too valuable for, you know, we got to see what the problem is now and what can we do about it to not only get you healthier or to, you know, solve this situation, but to keep our relationship intact, that we're there for each other.
So let me present a total hypothetical, and there are 10 million hypotheticals. Let's say you're teaching your son or daughter how to drive, and you tell them they're driving, and you're approaching a red light, going back to the red light, and you tell them, "No, don't run through the red light," and they run through the red light, and they get a ticket.
Consequence.
Afterwards, you might be tempted to say, "I told you so," but you're not supposed to say, "I told you so." What would you say instead of "I told you so"?
What's the consequence of going through red lights? What's the consequence of this? You know, and are you willing to pay those consequences? And can they get even worse? As in not just a ticket, but a fatal accident, whether it was you or someone else.
So you engage them in a conversation about what's the consequences?
You attempt to, and realizing all the time that you cannot reason with an unreasonable person. And don't become that unreasonable person in trying to reason with them.
Well, I'm not saying they're necessarily unreasonable.
And it's quite easy to do that.
I like the way you said that, Mona. Don't continue to reason with somebody who can't be reasoned with, because people keep doing that. It's like you see that you're not getting anywhere with this person. And you even know, like for somebody who has a memory issue, that they can't remember things and they can't think logically, but still you see people continuing to try to tell them to do something. It's just futile. It's frustrating. And like have the kid going through the red light and a cop coming over and pulling them over and giving them a ticket. Okay, so how are you going to pay for that ticket? So was it worth it?
And then truth or consequences, not only, as in not paying the ticket for the child, helping them to learn responsibility. I mean, there's just so many issues that go into all of these things. It's not just a 1 and 1 is 2.
So you remind them of the consequences. That's the answer to
You help them self-evaluate the consequences. No, you don't remind them. Reminding is just, let me point out how wrong you are and how right I was. And it's just driving that wedge between the relationship. So, everybody can, and it takes time to learn to develop the skills of seeing the light and stopping soon enough, and, have a little bit of empathy for the fact that it's something you need to grow into, but I want you to grow into it safely.
Because it's not a bad thing to allow our children to make mistakes. I mean, you want to be around so that it's not a fatal mistake or not a huge thing. But, and that's what, they say, start with them when they're young, when the consequences aren't so great, and then to teach them how to deal with those decisions that they make and to deal with the consequences. I can remember once the kids, there were 3 houses and it was in a cul-de-sac, and there were like 6 kids in those 3 houses. And they played together all the time. So they were going from one house to the other, coming in, slamming doors, and somebody threw the deadbolt on my door, and then when they slammed the door, it bent the deadbolt, so I couldn't close the door. And so I told the kids, I said, okay, you guys are gonna have to pay for this. You've been running through and doing all this. Of course, the parents just start, we're all so apologetic, and they were gonna pay. I said, the money is not the issue to me. It's the children need to learn that when somebody says not to run through the house, to not do that, because this is something that they did. And so, if the money's coming from you, I don't want it. But and I don't really even want your kids' money, but for them to understand that they need to be aware of what they're doing, and that there are consequences. Because if you keep allowing them to do things and you cover up for them and get them out of the trouble, they learn that mom's always there.
Yeah, and you're not growing character in them.
No.
Or you're not growing character in yourself to allow it to happen. Right. That is not being a good boss, a good parent, a good citizen.
Yeah.
And it is looking at the consequence and realizing that we don't get into the coercion ourselves. And we're
So how do you bring up the consequences?
That's a good note to close on.
How do you bring up the consequences without
gently, lovingly, kindly?
But not
you
remind.
can do it like a brainstorming. What do you think would happen to you? I mean, throw it back at them and have them think through it. As to what they think could happen.
Well, thank you for turning in. It's been nice looking at and talking about coercion and seeing how we can learn to be kinder.
Yes, that's the big word. Kindness. Kindness is the thing, to be kinder to each other and to work with each other. So thanks everybody for joining. If you want to see any of the past shows, you can go to wglasser.com and go into the members area. You don't have to be a member, but you do need to join, and you can see all past episodes. So Hope to see you next week for another edition of Greet the Week. Thank you.
Okay.